Wasatch Report, shooting straight on everything from prepping to politics.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wasatch Report. I'm Suzanne Sherman. This is a special Tuesday edition. So Jeff Johnson had the day off. My producer and co-founder of the network with Daniel Bailey had the day off. So, of course, I commandeered him for the morning to produce an extra show. Jeff, thank you so much for doing this today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
We're here over at the Cerberus Radio Network, and we defend freedom and liberty from the flames of tyranny. I believe our phone will be working today, 717-467-1736. It is February. Wow, where's the year going? February 13th, 2018. I am doing the show an hour earlier, as you can tell by my inability to figure out what day it is. And I'm going to be jumping over to K-Talk Media in Sandy, Utah after this show's over. So I'll be on for 2 hours live today. So after we're done here, you can hop on over there and join us for some current event discussions. I want to encourage you to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. We have a fan page also entitled CRN. You can send me your commentary also on Facebook, facebook.com/Suzanne Sherman, also Cowgirl Esquire. Jeff, yesterday you and I were lamenting a little bit. I guess it kind of verged on a pity party about how difficult it is to get this message out. We have a YouTube channel. It is Cerberus Radio Network. We want to encourage you to please check us out there, subscribe, share it with your friends. We've been saying how it's really difficult to get our message out there, particularly on YouTube. I don't know what it is, if it's the new Facebook algorithm, but it seems like many of our posts, I can share a picture of a chicken, or I can share, any kind of a commentary or meme and get a ton of response. But when we put these articles or these links up for the network on YouTube, it just doesn't seem like anybody's seeing them. But if you go to my wall, if you want to get involved in a lot of the discussions we have there, we get some great debates. A lot of people are changing their way of thinking. They're thanking us for putting these thought-provoking articles, statements out there. And, ultimately, Jeff, that is the goal. That is why we are doing this. So if it's on social media, or if they hear us on YouTube or radio co-stream, I think that's what really matters. And I see that we're getting some progress. More people are listening. So you can listen to us on Radio Co. While you're there, you can check out our other shows. Jeff Johnson usually has one right before me, The Paradigm Shift. We have the Other Side is a brand new show with Justin and Mike. We have some new talent coming to the network. The Bailey Report, Dan Bailey, he also has a representative, John, I forgot his last name, is running for state assembly in Pennsylvania. That's our founder's home state, Jeff and Daniel's home state. Brushfires of Freedom show. And we have Mike Meharry has put up some new podcasts. We'll upload those. He's from the 10th Amendment Center. I'm going to try and get to a couple of his articles a little bit later on about judicial review and who was intended to be the ultimate arbiter of what is constitutional. And newsflash, it is not the group or the branch of government that we were taught in school. So there's always something to learn here. And, really thank those that do listen and follow and share. Again, like we said, I feel like we're not even David versus David and Goliath with these mainstream media outlets. I was telling a friend of mine the other day, if there was a battle with David and Goliath, we'd probably be an ant in the general vicinity. But yesterday, when I was feeling a bit discouraged, a friend of mine said, you're not going to stop what you're doing because people are really getting the message and they want to hear what all of you guys have to say. So by that point, after I'd already quit, I was already getting ready for today's show. So sometimes it gets a little frustrating, and I think that's something you can relate to as well, Jeff, huh?
Yes, I had my own little moment about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I was getting just kind of discouraged with the whole thing. But you know what? This is what's really weird. At work, because my views are a little bit different than most because I'm not pro-war. I'm not pro worshiping this government. I get razzed a lot at work. What that told me was, in reality, people are actually listening because there's no way they would know at work unless they actually turned it on. And so I know I angered a few guys at work, but I've actually, some people, I talked to a guy the other day and he said, this is actually the most intelligent conversation I've ever had here at work. And so, we're getting the message out, and that's what's important. I'm not so concerned if I ever have 1 million listeners, as long as somebody's actually learning something. When I read Patrick Henry, I'm not reading it because, I just want to hear myself read. I'm reading it because what his principles were, what his ideas were, are very important, and they are applicable today.
I absolutely agree. Plus, the benefit of that is we just sound so darn intelligent when we read their words.
He uses words I don't even know what they mean. I mean, seriously, yesterday, what was that one word? I mean, here, I'm gonna find that word because no one talks like that. Where was that?
Yes, someone does. In fact,
encomium.
Yeah, I don't know what
the highest encomium. Those people, they were self-taught. They were homeschooled. They spoke Latin. A lot of them spoke Greek. And people today can't homeschool?
Pete,
come on.
Speaking of that, let me look something up because California is going after homeschoolers.
Yeah, I shared you a video. I looked for some articles on it. I don't find any articles on it, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. It doesn't mean that it's not in committees, that it's not moving forward in California. But there was like a video, and I didn't share it because I could not find some other news sources related to it. So when I do an article, it's because there's other news sources that are also citing it as well.
Well,
I couldn't find anything with that one.
I know that there's something going on in California right now that they are attacking homeschools. In fact, several years back, there was a lower court decision. And again, these attacks on homeschoolers often come after an unfortunately family situation. The recent attack is because of, I guess there were 13 or so kids or 20 kids that had been in restraints for years. It was a horrible case of abuse. And I think I shared on the show also how Iowans were talking about homeschoolers and how these kids just fall off the radar. They're not learning how to read. They're not being fed properly. But in California, there was a lower court decision as a result of, again, the child custody case where a district judge had said that you had to have a teacher's credential. He was very restrictive and limiting on homeschooling. And the courts were very quick. The system was very quick to back off of that because a lot of the homeschoolers in California are surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, it is California after all, on the liberal side, but we're also seeing another encroachment on the family choices in California with regards to vaccinations. You used to have a philosophical waiver option in that state, and a pediatrician in the California state legislature was the proponent and the author of a bill to take that choice away. So now in California, vaccinations are mandatory. Speaking of schools, there's something I came across, and I'm going to see if I can find it here. There is apparently a school in West Haven, Utah, and it's raising quite a hullabaloo. And they're having a school dance. And Jeff, I can argue both sides of this. Did you see the show Stranger Things?
No, I never watched that show.
Okay, so it won't spoil it for you. If I say if you see the end of Stranger Things, you can kind of see where they're going with this here. Because I thought, oh my gosh, this poor kid. But here's a school. It's in West Haven, Utah, and a lady named Natalie Richards has a 6th grade daughter who told her mom that she couldn't say no if a boy asked her to dance at this elementary Valentine's Day dance, and she didn't believe it at first. Now, I remember at Valentine's Day, we would pass out. I remember in 1st grade, we'd have our little folders that we made, and we'd hang them on the chairs. And before Valentine's Day, we'd put out all our little cards. And I don't know about you, Jeff, but there was always somebody in the class that I didn't like that was mean to me, and they weren't getting any Valentine's Day cards. And, you know, take it to another extreme where somebody is maybe not very popular and they don't get any cards and how they're going to feel. I'm not one to like to focus on kids' feelings and everything, but you have to think how cutthroat schools can be and how it can be so devastating to somebody that's trying to grow and mature and develop. I'm not one for safe spaces, but I kind of think when you have these kind of dances that you should teach your kids maybe to be compassionate, and in the schoolyard as well. The mother had told her daughter, "Oh, no, honey, you guys are misunderstanding again. That's not how it is." So the mom went to her daughter's teacher and she realized that the statement was accurate. The teacher said she can't. She has to say yes. And the mother said, "Excuse me." So she took her concerns to the school principal. And here's the mom talking. He basically just said that they've had this dance set up this way for a long time and they've never really had that concern before. She confirmed with the school district that it's a rule, but it's meant to teach students how to be inclusive. This is where being civil kind of crosses over into the ultimate agenda of forced inclusivity, the social experiment. But it says here, be respectful, be polite. We want to promote kindness. So we want you to say yes when someone asks you to dance. Now, Jeff, if I had a little girl in elementary school and she was going to this dance, I would let her know, and this is a debate I actually had with somebody on social media, by teaching them that you can say yes and have a dance. You have a chaperone situation. It's at a school event. If a young boy who is not popular, maybe overweight, maybe has braces or something, or he's not one of the cool kids, asks you to dance, is it that hard to be gracious and say thank you and have a dance? Nobody's advocating that this has to go any farther in teaching girls that they can't say no to boys. They're saying here this sends a bad message to girls that they have to say yes. It sends a bad message to boys that the girls can't say no. And the problem I see with this is the school is getting involved and teaching morality. This is something that the parents should instill in the children. Little boys should be taught to go up and ask politely. Little girls should be taught, if a boy comes up and approaches you politely in this limited situation, a school dance, there's no harm in saying yes and being gracious. I don't think something like this has to be elevated to the level or escalates in teaching boys that they cannot say no when we get into sexual situations or other issues of control. Psychologically, this woman saying, my daughter keeps coming to me and saying, I can't say no to a boy. That's the message the kids are getting. I think the parents' message of kindness and being gracious and civil, regardless of the status of another student, is what should be the message of this story. I think the students of the school should get the message from the school about education. When we have students being exposed to an institutionalized message of morality and decency, I think that's where this gets a little fuzzy. Do you have any thoughts on this, Jeff? Maybe I'm just biased because I have boys and I'd hate to have their feelings hurt. I don't know. I just don't think it's very hard to say to just, hey, yeah, say yes. And by the way, why can't a girl ask a boy to dance? And he should also be civil and gracious and courteous if maybe she's not the one he wants to dance with. Be kind. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think that in this limited situation, I don't know what the age group that this was talking about. Was this an elementary school?
Elementary school, which also raises the issue. Why are we having dances?
Why are we having dances in elementary school? But that aside, yes, I agree. In this situation, this is where the parents should be saying it is perfectly fine for you to be gracious and accept the dance. That isn't to mean that you can never say no to a guy. I mean, and the conversation's over. I mean, really, how hard was that? It's a parenting issue. This is not, the school shouldn't be involved in this anyway, but that's the problem all the way across the board. Actually, I was just talking to someone the other day, and our local high school over here is going to have a trap team now. I was like, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to be able, how are they going to handle that? Is the school going to own guns, or the kids going to, I mean, it was, back in the day, it was never an issue. I mean, we would have our gun in the vehicle when we were going hunting after school. It was never an issue. But today, the school and everyone's involved, and we've lost the whole sense of moral and our moral compass and morality, and kids are not taught about any value of life. And that's really why abortion is such a big issue, because there's no value for life. And that's why we have these kids shooting schools up, because they're not getting any instruction at home about the value of another human being. And that's what this is, too, with this whole yes and no thing. It's about a value of a human being.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to talk a little bit about the value of life as well. And this is somewhere where I have changed my thoughts on so many issues. I once used to be so pro-war, pro-nationalistic, pro-flag, pro-anthem. Not saying that I hate our country, you know how I feel about that, but I've really come around to learning what the methods and what the message really behind these rituals are and what they're trying to do with us. But I don't want to focus on that right now. Utah is talking about, there's a bill, let me see if I can find this, about ending the death penalty. And this is something that I used to be very much in favor of, the death penalty. And it's House Bill 379. Connor Boyack has Libertas Institute out here, and they are coming out in favor of repealing the death penalty. Now, I'm talking about the state of Utah. Okay, the death penalty is not unconstitutional. It is, in fact, the Fifth Amendment in the Bill of Rights says that life, liberty, or property cannot be denied without due process of law. Again, now remember, the Bill of Rights applies to the general government, not the states, according to the document as ratified. Connor Boyack, he is the leader of an institute out here called Libertas. I've interviewed him before. His comments on this, I'm going to share with you briefly. Many people have come to a different view on capital punishment than they have historically held. That is really me. Frankly and statistically, the more people learn about the death penalty, the less they support it. And this has actually been confirmed by a lot of commentary. Again, go to my Facebook page, join in these discussions. Even if you want to just lurk, you will learn a lot. I've got some very, very high caliber followers and listeners, and I do not have an echo chamber here. We have a lot of people with different opinions, but I will say one thing: they are all well-spoken for the most part and very educated. It costs $20 million in Utah per executed person. Money that could be used for other criminal justice needs, or money, Jeff, we don't need to spend at all, or money, Jeff, we don't need to tax the people for at all. And we also know that innocent people can be and are executed. It happens. If it also victimizes the loved ones of the victims, it turns the killers into household celebrity names. We hear that. I remember in California when they were going to kill somebody, that person becomes a household name in the news for that time. We get people having a candlelight vigil for them. I think that makes it even harder for the victims' families. It's better, and I agree with him here as well. We have something called, and when I was practicing law, LWOP, life without parole. Lock them up, throw away the key, and if they turn out later to be innocent, then they're still alive. And so this is being proposed in Utah, and we'll see how it goes. Again, what happens in Utah? If Utah chooses to repeal it, that's fine. If other states choose to keep it, that's up to them. This is the heart and soul of federalism. We do not need to have one standard for all 50 nation states in this union. Any thoughts on that, Jeff? I know that this is a complicated issue. You know, I know if you're a victim or you have a family member who is a victim of a horrific crime, you really want to see justice meted out. But I also look at, again, the cost financially when you compare the lack of deterrent effect that the death penalty has as well. And I also have become a little bit reticent to accept the state killing of human beings. You were mentioning respect for life. I think we're also sending a message as well that the state is killing a person who at the time when they execute them is no longer a threat to society. They're going to be locked up. They will never be a threat again. They will never be let out. But you know, this is a discussion that we can have. And if Utah does away with the death penalty, I wouldn't be devastated by that. You have anything you want to chime in on that?
Well, I agree with you that it is a state issue, and if the state of Utah decides to do this, that's entirely within their prerogative. So I will disagree with you a bit. I continue to be pro death penalty, but I'm not going to really. It's a very difficult and it's a complicated issue. Let's just put it that way.
It is. And, you know, when I hear about somebody that's committed some horrific crime having been executed, I'll tell you right now, I don't shed a tear. I don't feel bad for them. I feel bad that the whole thing happened. My sympathies obviously go more for the family than the victim. But we also know there are many cases where people are locked away for decades only to turn out to be innocent. And that's something we need to think of as well. So just wanted to share a little bit of local news. And out in California, this was also sent to me. Let me see if I can find this. There was recently a holding, and we have another wedding cake issue out there. And I wanted to get on here because this also, we have this in numerous states going on where we have homosexual couples going to Christian bakers. Let's be honest, they seek them out. And they will, if the bakers try to refuse them the services of baking a wedding cake for a single-sex wedding ceremony, they will run to the court system. I think, is it the couple in Oregon that's been fined $100,000 or something like this? This is literally going to ruin the lives of people that are minding their own business and simply trying to exercise their faith. It's not like it's not like Christians have a monopoly on baking cakes. Many of them have politely referred the couple to other bakers, but no, this is a matter of them wanting to impose their will and their lifestyle to the detriment of these people's Christian beliefs. So this was a case that arose out of Bakersfield. Our friend Robin, who has Tail Gunner Apparel, who is going to be making her escape from Bakersfield very soon to Arizona, sent me this article. But in Bakersfield, a California bakery owner can continue to refuse to make wedding cakes for same-sex couples because it violates her Christian beliefs, a judge ruled. Now, this is interesting because what I read about the ruling was not based on the Christian beliefs. I'll read a little bit further. Oftentimes, I'll tell you, these stories will tell you one justification for a ruling that turns out to be erroneous. And there's another story I have in mind as an example, but I may or may not get to it. So the decision came after a lawyer for Tastries Bakery in Bakersfield, that's hard to say, argued that the owner's right to free speech and free expression of religion trumps the argument that she violated a state anti-discrimination law. Superior Court Judge David Lampe agreed, but said Monday his ruling was tied closely to the fact that she was being asked to make a cake for an event and that the act of creating it was protected artistic expression. Now, mind you, that is not the same as saying that she as a Christian had a right not to participate in a ceremony that was diametrically opposed to her religious beliefs. They're putting this under a non-dominational, secular form of artistic expression. So he says here, a retail tire shop may not refuse to sell a tire because the owner does not want to sell tires to same-sex couples. I agree with that. No baker may place their wares in a public display case, open air, and then refuse because of race, religion, gender, or gender identification. He said it went against her Christian beliefs to make a cake for a same-sex couple. She told the newspaper she was overjoyed by the ruling. But again, here we have the focus here has been, well, they are acknowledging this. The religious aspect is really the focus on her artistic expression. And of course, the decision comes as a U.S. Supreme Court prepares to rule in a high-profile case of a Colorado baker who refused to make a wedding for a same-sex couple. Again, these are local issues. The federal judiciary has absolutely no business hearing this case. And I've been focusing on stuff like this for a while because on last Friday, I had Dan Fisher, or Thursday, Dan Fisher on Inside the News on K-Talk Radio. And Dan Fisher is going to be able to spend a lot more time with us here on our show. On terrestrial radio, it's great. You get a really large audience, but you have a lot of interruptions, a lot of callers, and you can't really get into the issues on this. But Dan Fisher is running in the state of Oklahoma for the position of the governor, and he is running on a platform that seeks to abolish human abortion in the state. As we know, and I'll get into judicial review a little later on, the Supreme Court has spoken, and according to a lot of people, Roe versus Wade is the law of the land. And I remember being in law school discussing Roe versus Wade, and we had the rational basis, compelling state interests, all these weighing of the mother's right to privacy and to do what she wants with her body versus the state's compelling interests in balancing when the baby can be aborted. But you know what was missing in that discussion, Jeff, was the rights of the baby. It's never mentioned. The rights of the unborn baby are never mentioned. Well, there's a man in Oklahoma now who is running on a platform to stand up for the rights of these unborn children. And again, this is the heart and soul of federalism. What Oklahoma chooses to do should not be affected by what the Supreme Court says. A Supreme Court opinion is just that. It is not law. It is not a legislative act, and it should not impact anybody. There has been no law that I know of that says every single state must provide abortions, and if there is one, it's unconstitutional. Do you have any thoughts on that one? Let's go back first to the gay baker. First,
yeah, I was just looking up. I was just getting online to look in California's constitution, see what it said about religious rights and freedoms. That's what I was just doing right as you asked me that. So I'm going to continue looking.
Yeah, well, regardless of what California's constitution says about it, I would submit to you that the rights of the LGBTQ LMNOP community and whatever they're asserting is violated will always trump what the Constitution says in California when it comes to the religious liberties of Christians or anybody that dares to not participate in these types of ceremonies by making a cake for them. I would think a judge would disregard that entirely.
Well, what they're doing is they are infringing somebody else's rights to enforce a man-made right, where the right for conscious of someone to worship their God as they wish is a natural right that doesn't come from man; it comes from God. So, again, the California Constitution makes a difference here, and that's the only one that does make a difference. If it guarantees these people the right to their conscience to worship as they wish, then California has no authority to take away their right to decide if that's objectionable to them. Then they should be able to not bake the cake.
Plus, I'm a huge believer in freedom of association. I mean, they gave the example of Christians not wanting to sell tires in a tire shop to homosexual couples. And while I agree they shouldn't do that, do I really want a law that says they can't do that? Or do we really want to go with freedom of association in any area and let the marketplace decide? Look, if somebody is openly not wanting to do business with homosexuals, the marketplace will determine whether they stay in business or not. Not the government saying you have no right to sell to people you don't want to. Yeah, that's discrimination. That's discriminatory. However, isn't the better solution for this to have people just eschew that business and not give them the their money. So if that's something you support, then do business there. But if it's not, then go somewhere else. And if you think that they are discriminatory and hateful people, they will go out of business. So there is also, I want to
spend your money where let your money do the talking. If it's something that is objectionable to you, then don't spend your money there. The market will sort this out. The government doesn't even be involved, period, anyway.
Exactly. And this is what happened every single time we get the government involved. We get this hodgepodge of regulations. Here's something I did not run this by you before we went on the air, but it came across on my Twitter feed. I'm not going to give out the guy's name because I think he's just one of those typical attorneys who says that he's an expert on the Second Amendment. I did a post about this yesterday talking about Second Amendment rights, and he had a police chief in their town come on the air, and we as gun owners are responsible for securing our firearms. What this conversation detailed, and I didn't even plan to go on into this on the show, but I'm thinking about this now because it's another situation where we have laws in California that your firearms need to be locked up. They need to be secured. What they were doing is having this discussion that 1,700 guns had been stolen from vehicles and from people's homes. They're saying we as gun owners become complicit when our firearms are stolen, and we lose the moral high ground because we are, in effect, almost, I would say, becoming accessories to crime, because criminals are getting our guns when they steal them if we fail to secure them. I agree that's irresponsible, but my take on this was they are getting people desensitized to having more gun regulations, more laws that they can get you for if you have a firearm that is not properly secured in your vehicle. If your gun is stolen, yes, you were careless, but you're also a victim of a crime. And
Suzanne, I have a question. If we are complicit and we are accessories to the crime, if our firearm is stolen, were the police complicit and accessories in the crime when that car crossed the highway, hit that trucker, and eventually killed him, where the nurse was being required to get the blood draw? If they were chasing a criminal and they caused the accident, were they then complicit?
Exactly.
Or is there no complicity involved in this at all?
Yeah, exactly. And to take people, law-abiding citizens, and putting them in the same category as the people that are committing the gun violence that they were talking about. This thing was all hardcore gun control rhetoric. And here's this guy that proclaims to be a vanguard of your Second Amendment rights, going along with this police chief and making us feel bad because criminals are stealing our guns. How about we make the criminals feel bad and increase the penalties exponentially for stealing firearms or using them in a crime? We've got to get away from this mentality that somehow law-abiding citizens are complicit in crime because of the acts of criminals. Speaking of firearms, this is something that just showed up. I think I was just tagged in this. Breitbart has an article, CBS News, on national reciprocity. And just before this article popped up in my head, I was thinking about the arrogance of the people on the coastal cities and how they refer to the people who I consider the salt in the earth of our culture and our American society, the heart and soul, salt of the earth, good people in the flyover states. Those are the people that I met when we take our road trips, people that just leave a lasting impression on me. That, again, if you're not going, if you're just have business in Los Angeles or San Francisco, New York, DC, Boston, that's all that matters. Everybody else, just fly over. They're not worth it. Well, check this out. Here is CBS News on national reciprocity. Flyover countries' security blanket could become coastal cities' nightmare. How arrogant is this? This was during an airing of, no surprise, 60 Minutes. CBS News described guns as a flyover country's county security blanket that could become the coastal city's worst nightmare. Passed the House in December 6, 2017. CBS News warned that passage in the Senate would mandate that the carry permit of any one state could be recognized in every state. Now, gun rights people will think, this is great. I can carry everywhere and not be a criminal because I passed state laws. As we know, we can get into this if we have time, but my article on national reciprocity refutes this, and it is constitutionally not permissible. They turned to Robin Thomas with Gabby Gifford's gun control group, and Thomas said, someone who lives in Nevada who's able to carry a loaded concealed weapon in Nevada could now bring that loaded gun into Los Angeles, where guess what? All the criminals already have loaded guns, into San Francisco, Kate Steinle, and carry their loaded weapon, even though in San Francisco, that's not someone who would get a permit. No, only illegals who've been deported 5 times can carry firearms, apparently. Thomas's statement gives the impression that national reciprocity allows people to carry who otherwise would not be able to. But this is a play on words. In reality, individuals who passed a background check require a permit in Nevada have demonstrated they're legally able to carry. Now, this is where Breitbart gets it wrong as well, Jeff, because somebody could be issued a permit in Utah, like I could be if I chose to get one, who would not be issued one in California for reasons other than there being a law-abiding citizen. The availability in California and the standard for the test in California is much more stringent. It's 2 days with live fire exercises. They don't have that in Utah. So we don't even have the same level playing field on the ability to get the permits themselves. So it's not just about criminal background checks. It's in the variation of the standards of issuing the permits. And the states, the local municipalities, have the right to decide who is going to have a permit. In California, you're decided yes or no by your local law enforcement official. That's how they've decided in a may issue state. Utah, you submit your application and it is a shall issue state. If you are a law-abiding citizen, you will be issued a concealed carry permit. California, the article continues, is actually a perfect example of why national reciprocity is needed. Well, it might be needed on the short term, you might think, but we can get into that later, because law-abiding Californians who demonstrate a lack of criminal record are nonetheless denied a concealed carry permit on the grounds that they cannot show good cause. Well, now the article is actually contradicting itself, because California residents, if their state does not want to issue this, I guess they can go and get one out of state, have different requirements that will have forced reciprocity. So now California citizens who would otherwise have to take a 2-day course can now get one online out of state and then carry in California. This is not federalism. This is not federalism when you're going to impose a national standard. Federalism is when California does what it wants to do pursuant to Article 1, Section 8, pursuant to Article 9, or the 9th Amendment, pursuant to the 10th Amendment, and the 2nd Amendment, which does not apply to California. CBS News described guns as a security blanket. We know that. What was it Obama said? They cling to their guns and the Bible because we're scared. No, that keeps us from being scared, and it's not a matter of security, by the way. Here's what they say, CBS News: in the red states that stretch from the Carolinas through the mountains of the far west, it is a political fault line of regional and cultural differences that split the country, and guns are one of the triggers. They're woven into a culture here, passed down from generation to generation in rural, remote parts of the country where dialing 911 does not always bring immediate help. Here again is a deference to relying on the government for immediate help and not your personal responsibility. And so to people here, whether they're single mothers worried about robbers and rapists while driving their kids across state lines to soccer matches, oh my God, how condescending is this? Or ranchers worried about rattlesnake, guns are a security blanket of self-reliance and protection that keep them safe. So tools that allow single mothers to fend off robbers and rapists in rural America somehow portend a rise in crime if carried into the big cities and blue states. In reality, national reciprocity poses a threat to the top-down gun control that currently keeps visitors to blue states and big cities disarmed. Ultimately, as we have said time and time again, national reciprocity will be the tool of the top-down gun control advocates. Because remember, if you want to jump on this because our guys are in office now, we've got a president that will sign this legislation, we have both houses, it's time to move. We will get eventually an administration, Congress in charge, Supreme Court justices that will be in opposition to national reciprocity, look for some sort of national emergency where there will be a federal database for national reciprocity if this passes. By the way, mark my words. Well, now in the interest of public safety, we are going to rescind all permits. Is it a far stretch to say we will also be collecting the firearms that are registered under these permits? It really isn't. So this is, as my article calls it, a Trojan horse, and it violates the Second Amendment. It is absolutely a means by which the government will be able to ensnare law-abiding citizens, look for national standards on carrying. For instance, what kind of firearms will be allowed? How about this one? Magazine limits. So, these are things that you need to worry about. And this is something that is a very bad idea. Jeff, you probably want to have something to say about this as well.
Well, I think we've really talked about this quite in depth for quite a while now, that this really is a state issue. And if California decides they want to have very strict gun control laws, that's their right to do so. And again, just as the cake thing, the market will sort this out. If I can't carry legally on my permit into California, then I will not go to California. They're not going to get my tourism dollars because I'm not going to go there. I will go to Utah. That will let me carry on my permit because they have reciprocity already. On my Pennsylvania permit, I can go into almost 30 states as it is without doing anything. The federal government doesn't have to do anything about it. So I won't go to the states that I can take it into, period. So I'll let the market will sort this out. And furthermore, if you want a Second Amendment right, then you are giving the government the right to take away that right. So, and we've said that, I don't know how many times, hundreds of times.
Exactly. And this is where I got in a big brouhaha with that guy who I was referring to earlier with his podcast with the police chief of his community. He had posted something saying he was going to a college campus to teach young Republicans about their Second Amendment rights. And I just said, there's no such thing. And he said, why are you being critical of me? I'm out here doing a good thing. And I said, no, you are not. You're teaching them that these rights have been granted to us by a government entity, and what has been granted to us can be regulated and ultimately taken away. So no, stop your virtue signaling. You're doing more harm than good. By the way, I'll debate you on your radio show about this anytime. We had this long debate on his wall, and then he got me, I'll say this, by a technical knockout. As I'm hammering away, I accidentally wrote bear arms, B-A-R-E. My bad. Well, he jumped on that like a fly on you-know-what and said, if you don't know the difference between bear and bear, the two different spellings, you don't have no right to comment on my page. And he blocked me. He took off the entire debate, which I will say historically, factually, I was spot on, but I spelled bear wrong. My bad. And I sent him an email. I said, I'll debate you with this on this topic on your show, my show, you name it. And he said, well, you're welcome to call on my show, but that's not the same as a debate. It's a caller that can be cut off at any time. So anyway, when I saw that person with this interview, it just made me realize some people are just so wrong. And this is what's frustrating, Jeff. We're trying to educate these people. And this is what we're up against, the people with the much bigger audiences that pretty much tell people what they want to hear. A little bit of listener feedback.
I want to hit something on that because you posted something the other day, a nice thing. I think it was in red about. Let's see, what was it? Pro-life is to. I can't remember what you posted there as the NRA. quite honestly, it really does come down to dollars and cents, and that is all that really matters. And a lot of these people, and that's all that matters to these people with these talk shows as well. It's just about dollars and cents.
Yeah, that created a big brouhaha, and it had a great discussion as well. What was it I said? I said pro-life is to life as the NRA is to gun rights, and this is exactly the thing. Yes, pro-life is about regulating abortion, and it's about we just had the Senate give each other high fives for voting down a law that would have banned abortion after 20 weeks. Well, even before 20 weeks, what makes a baby viable for, worthy of being saved one day, but not the day before? So we really need to have a discussion about where do we draw the line here? This is Christians are practicing this moral relativism under this misguided, misunderstood notion of Romans that they need to obey the government. This happened to me in one of my Bible study classes. The moral of the story, what we took home for our discussion was obey the government because that was put in place by God. God would not allow bad government to be put in place. So what about Hitler? What about Mao? What about Stalin? What about Lenin? And what about when we're forced to pay for abortions with our tax dollars? Are you okay with that? Well, just pay your taxes, even if it's paying for abortion, and God will sort it out. No, no, this isn't the right way to attack this. And Christians who are sitting on their hands saying nothing because of this fear, and also this indoctrination that the Supreme Court is any opinion they have is the law of the land, is absolutely in contravention to our founding principles. Let me just jump in really quick. Judicial review. What really is this? When we were talking yesterday about the three branches of government and our checks and balances, the intention was for the legislative branch to be the most powerful. The executive branch, the president, was supposed to just put into execution and enforce the laws that the Senate and the House of Representatives and the Senate present to him. He signs into law. What we have now is a federal judiciary. I mean, we're taught in school that these were, I talked about our equilateral triangles, that they were equally powerful. But really what we have now is a federal judiciary that has become the most powerful branch of the general government. Even Alexander, who was a proponent of an elected of our form of monarchy and a strong central government, argued in Federalist 78 that the judiciary would actually be the weakest branch of the government, and the judiciary, from the nature of its functions, I'm quoting him here, will always be the least dangerous to the political rights of the Constitution. And this is the exact opposite of what we're seeing right now. The judiciary was supposed to have a very specific role, and that's to judge cases. We're told to judge cases in controversy. This is set forth in Article 2 and reaffirmed when it appeared that Article 2 wasn't strong enough to convey this message, that in the 11th Amendment, the judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by another. It was essentially to keep the federal judiciary from interfering with state activities. And we saw, notwithstanding the 11th Amendment, usurpation of this, and the way it's justified, how we learn it in law school, cases arising under the Constitution of the United States. Well, the way they get around this is by the 14th Amendment, where pretty much anything is a constitutional issue. Abortion has become a constitutional issue. Gay marriage has become a constitutional issue. Putting kids on buses and putting them in a neighborhood across town from where their parents bought a home so they could walk to school has become a constitutional issue. Jury nullification. Light bulbs. I mean, there is nothing that this federal government has not taken control of. So you see the Supreme Court also upholding unconstitutional acts by the general government under this felonious, or ferocious, I should say, fallacious concept that the three branches of the federal government, the general government created by the states, are somehow going to restrain themselves. We're not seeing that. So, Jeff, who is the ultimate arbiter? And there are two articles here by Mike Meharry that I'm going to post so you can read. One is from his own website and one is from the 10th Amendment Center, but they're both Constitution 101 articles. One is about the judiciary and the judicial review. And Jeff, the other one is about who's the ultimate arbiter and how do they do it?
The ultimate arbiter is the states or the people.
Absolutely. And the states can be the ultimate arbiter by nullification. The states retain the absolute authority. The federal government right now gets to decide the extent of its own power, and I'm reading from Mike's article here, through its own judicial branch, and the people of the states possess no mechanism to hold the government it created in check. The whole notion of limited, enumerated powers, thanks to this runaway judiciary, has become a farce. The federal government, in practice, becomes one of limitless power. This is exactly what we are seeing, and this is why the states are afraid to challenge the general government on the issue of abortion. Again, finally, Dan Fisher is going to do this, and if he is elected, you can mark my words, before the ink is dry and he signs a bill criminalizing human abortion into law, before that ink is dry, there will be a federal court injunction on that matter. So it's going to be interesting. I hope he's elected, and then to see what's going to happen now. We have seen states buck federal law when it comes to marijuana. I think 26 states have legalized it in one form or another, some even for recreational use. They're kind of looking the other way because in this situation, the feds get the best of both worlds. The states get to tax the bejesus out of marijuana, as you're seeing in California. I think it's almost a 40% tax, which, by the way, is just going to revert back to criminal behavior with regards to something heavily taxed. People are just going to sell it on the black market. So the other thing is, by keeping it illegal and turning their heads, they don't get into this political hot button with some states that they really need, and they can keep their civil asset forfeiture laws in effect, something that Jeff Sessions has said he is going to double down on. Not only that, he's recently gone after a 12-year-old, I think, who's using cannabis for medical purposes for seizures. So we have this runaway federal government that is not restrained by the federal judiciary. So what we need to do is get the message out there that the ultimate power to rein in the general government is with the states. These sentiments were expressed in the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions by Madison and Jefferson when, in response to the Federalist Party's Alien and Sedition Acts. So the ultimate arbiter of what is constitutional goes to the people in the states. And this is why when you have something like national reciprocity proposed, or if you don't like your state's gun laws, it is absolutely incumbent upon you to resolve this issue in your state system. People like to say, well, the states don't have the right to violate these constitutional or these God-given unalienable rights. And I agree with you. I don't think the states should do that. If their constitution allows for it, fight to amend that constitution, fight your legislatures if they are, your elected officials, if they are violating the constitution that's in effect, that is pro-gun. But the issue of the federal court getting involved and federalism here and the authority, the jurisdiction of them, it's a jurisdictional question. What is the proper venue for seeking redress? If you do not like the gun laws in California, it is incumbent upon you to either effectuate a change or move. I moved to Utah, where the gun laws are much more favorable to my liking. People in California might say those laws are favorable to their liking. But the bottom line is this is a jurisdictional question. And ultimately, when people keep going to the federal courts see that as a way for them to get more power, which is exactly what they did when they claimed the power of judicial review. They gave this power to themselves. That wasn't set forth in the Constitution for them. You're giving them the power to regulate it more and more and more. And this is what happened with Antonin Scalia in his Heller decision, which incorporated the Second Amendment against the states. This was the NRA. Going back to that meme I put up, Jeff, the NRA is in fact detrimental to our gun rights. They have brought the federal government's power to rein in unconstitutionally in violation of the Second and the 10th Amendments on gun laws of the states. This is why they're looking for national reciprocity. They justify it by saying, well, if we have a disparity of opinions and how this is going to be carried out. Fortunately, Donald Trump's going to be putting a Supreme Court justice on the bench, and we'll have something good. The Supreme Court, this was my debate with Charles Heller in Tucson, Arizona. The Supreme Court will come up with a way to make this work across this nation. And I said, and where do they have the authority to do that? Then you're going to end up with a situation where we have concealed carry permits more akin to those of California than we're going to have like those in states in Utah, Arizona, Wyoming, Montana. We're going to see something far more restrictive. Want to address a listener feedback with regards to the police officer and the gun rights lawyer saying that we as gun owners are complicit in crime if our guns get stolen due to our failing to keep criminals out of our vehicles. Is a woman complicit in rape because she does not have a chastity belt? You know, again, let's blame the victim and ensnare more victims. So yes, that's a bit of an extreme example, but I see where he's going with this, and it's nice to know people are listening and chiming in on this. So, you know, that's really my take on this whole thing. This system of federalism is becoming a matter of life or death. We have an opportunity in the state of Oklahoma to say no to federal overreach and to save lives. At this point, I'm not getting into personally the discussion of when life begins. Is it at conception? Is it when you hear a heart? That's something for the people of Oklahoma to discern on their own. But here's my other debate I had with somebody last night. Look, I'm pro-life. I don't like abortion unless we have cases of rape or incest. And something that I've learned from following this campaign, Jeff, one of the big leftist justifications for DACA, for instance, is we don't want to punish the child for the acts of its parents. If they bring children here illegally, the parents were the wrongdoers. We don't want to make the child pay. Well, is the child who is created from unfortunate circumstances any less innocent than the other babies? Is a child in that situation worthy of being punished for the acts of the father? And this was something that somebody responded to me. You can find it on my wall. I found this very frightening. Well, the child that is a result of, say, rape is going to have predispositions of violence. What does that sound like to you, Jeff? It's okay to kill the children of violent parents? Is it okay to kill the children of people who violate other laws? Do you see where we're going with this here? So,
well, I guess they just they're going to decide how children are going to be before they're born. I guess it's a precog thing.
Yeah, this is really scary. Somebody sent me this. Elk takes down a helicopter in Wasatch County. That's kind of in my neck of the woods here. I think we have just a minute left, or are we out of time? Helicopter has crashed in Wasatch. Okay, in Wasatch County. It happened near a reserve. 2 people were injured. The elk was killed. how they were trying to net the elk, sedate it, and fly it back to a collar. I love our DNR, these guys. Anyway, so, well, that was my thoughts. I wanted to kind of set the stage. Yesterday, I discussed the proper role of the executive, and now what we want to do is tie this in with judicial review, state nullification of unconstitutional federal restrictions on their sovereignty. This is going to tie into what we have with the Dan Fisher campaign for governor.
Men, women, we could use a man like Herbert Hoover again.
On the Wasatch Report on Cerberus Radio.
No welfare state.
Tyranny.
Everybody pulled his weight.
She our old LaSalle ran great. Those were the